Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the first series of the Evolution podcast, where we're meeting with owners of coaching and training SMBs to discuss evolving their business and client impact in the era of AI. Today, I'm excited to have Jeremy Scheifling with me. Jeremy has delivered official LinkedIn and AI training at 300 plus universities. He's wrote a best-selling book for AI for careers. He was an early OpenAI partner, and he's now the founder at the Job Insiders. Jeremy, thank you for being here. And please tell us a bit more about your journey and what your mission is at the Job Insiders.
Yeah, so excited to be here, Ethan. First of all, I've definitely been in the shoes of a lot of people listening to this because I was a college student once upon a time, trying to figure out how to find my way in the world. And one of the things that I learned across the course of my journey was that the stuff that we set out to do when we're choosing a major or graduate from college is often very different than the stuff we end up doing over the course of our career. And so I've been trying to reverse engineer that using LinkedIn, using AI to help students and recent grads be successful in starting their endeavors, even in this crazy world of ours. So that's my mission at this point.
Yeah, no, that tracks really well. And it would be great to just hear a little bit more about you. Like, how did you said that over your time in your career, you learned that there was this gap? Maybe what were some of the key moments that led to you being like, I need to go and start this to provide that value that I didn't have?
Yeah, absolutely. So my story was very much sort of the genesis of this business in the sense that I started as an education major who was a kindergarten teacher right out of college. And I thought this was going to be my forever career. And then probably like a couple weeks in, I was like, this sucks. I hate this. I'm really bad at it. There's got to be something else. And there was, it's like the same time that I was hating teaching, I was loving building a website for the classroom, a blog for the classroom, all this techie stuff. And by playing to those strengths, over time, I landed jobs in Silicon Valley. And I said, wait, if this nerd, this former kindergarten teacher can do this, anyone can do it if they know what to focus on. And so that's why one of the first things that I share with students when I coach them today is, look, don't be bound by your major. Don't be bound by whatever it says on that piece of parchment. Instead, start to figure out who you really are in the world and then find that connection with an opportunity that gives you a chance to play to your strengths, because life is too short just to be bound by whatever you focused on when you were 18 years old.
I agree. And I really resonate with that. I've actually been talking with this student at Georgetown University and basically helping him come up with like the framework for going about the job search. And it was totally like not what I did, which is why I was able to look back on my life and be like, this is my recommendation. And it was all rooted in like, what are the things that have made you happy, have given you a sense of purpose, and combining that with the things that you've done, which hopefully overlap with the things that have made you happy, because these are the things that are going to appeal to you and appeal to recruiters as you move into the long term. So totally resonate with that. And I think today, in the era of AI, it's just even more important to be thinking about this and also building the skill set that comes along with that interest and sense of purpose that you get out of your work. And so that brings us into today's episode, which is going to be closing the gap between AI training and skill demand. Because as we talked about during our call last week, there's a 25% to 90% gap here, right? 25% of new grads are arriving having learned anything about AI and using it and applying it in a business setting, whereas 90% of hiring managers are expecting Gen Z to be AI fluent. And so I guess for the first question for you here, Jeremy, curious, when you think about closing that gap at scale, where does today's educational infrastructure run out of road first?
Yeah. And I do think that it's one of these classic cases of an institution, namely higher education, that is built for the long run, right? Some of these universities, like your own alma mater, may have been around for a couple hundred years.
Go Heels.
And yet, that's right, go Heels. In the last couple of years, the world has just changed a ton, and they're not built to move with the world that fast. They're built to sort of stand astride time, not sort of follow along with it. And so my challenge for all the higher ed folks out there, whether you're a career center leader or a dean or even a president, is, hey, even if our institutions are built for that longer term scheme, how do we make sure that we are getting students what they need to be ready today and most importantly tomorrow, because these are clearly the skills that are being demanded. And so I think it definitely has to be a little bit top down, but I also encourage students to do what you're doing, Ethan. Like you were telling me about how you're using Claude in your own business. And I feel like it is incumbent upon student club leaders, student council folks to say, hey, we also have to educate ourselves, not just to be using these tools in the most obvious way, like let me go out there and use AI to write my term papers or write my resume.
Mhm.
But how do I use AI in really sophisticated ways where I add value? And now when I get hired, I'm that employee that everyone's looking up to because I'm bringing skills that all the old folks have never even figured out.
Yeah, yeah, no, totally agree. And I guess like the follow up question to that is you say that there has to be some top down, there has to be some bottom up. We'll talk later about what that means from your business approach to attacking the bottom up and top down. But I guess from the top down side, like what do you think that educational institutions need to be putting in place? Is it a designated body that's specifically, AI rollout and inclusion within programming? Is it? I don't know. You probably have a better feel for me. Curious what schools that you think have been leading in this have been doing, and what you think everyone should be doing.
Yeah, so two tiers from the top down approach. I think first is having a really consistent vision for what AI is going to mean for the future of work. Because obviously, even though we go to college and university to learn and have this amazing experience for 4 years, we're also thinking about the next 40 years and how are we going to translate what we learned into an actual job and career. And so if schools are really honest with themselves, they're going to say, hey, we are hearing from our employer partners that 90% stat. These are in-demand skills, which means we need to inculcate them as opposed to being the classic ostrich that dunks its head in the sand and tries to ignore it. And then once you have that high-level vision and agreement in place, how do we actually teach these skills? Not just have a policy about, oh, you can use AI for this, but don't use AI for that, but actually bring it into the classroom, bring it into the career services context. So we are leading students on not just the right way to write a paper, but the right way to write a prompt, the right way to use AI that blends your human ingenuity with the powers of this machine. And I think if schools can lead on that, students are willing to listen because now they're speaking the language of the future, which of course the students have a vested interest in. So I think it starts at the very top and then it comes all the way down to the classroom level as well. Yeah, this is so important because I think when I talk to career service folks and I say, hey, here's how you can use it in your coaching sessions, here's how you can use it to help your students focus their job searches, they say, whoa, 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 this is scary. This is going to replace me, or I don't know if I can trust it. But if you start instead of the student focusing approach and instead say, hey, all those student feedback forms you've been collecting for the last 25 years that you've never actually looked at because it's just too much data and it's too unstructured?
Yeah.
What if you could dump that into ChatGPT or to Claude and figure out here are the top 10 things that are working, here are the top 5 things that we have to improve to deliver better results next year. And when they see what it can do behind the scenes and they build the confidence and the muscle memory of it, now they feel a lot more comfortable using it out front with students because they're already getting value in their own professional lives. And so I think you're absolutely right, Ethan, is that like all this AI transformation has to happen on the individual level of like, let me actually experience it myself versus just top down, you must be using it, period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. All right, no, that's fantastic. Lots of great perspective there. I guess shifting gears a little bit here, I was thinking about all of the so-called self-proclaimed AI gurus that exist on the market right now, right? So younger people who are pretending to know everything about AI. And unfortunately, these people are engaging in the same line of work as you in ways, right? There's all this very loud AI career advice that's circulating right now from people whose business model, frankly, is just to attract people and get viewership. And it's not always on the foundation of good information, right? So I guess I'm curious where you think some of the key ways that people are, drawing this line improperly between what AI should be doing versus shouldn't be doing when it comes to job seeking.
Yeah, and I think this is really pernicious because right now we're in this historically bad labor market for recent grads. And then you compound that with the fact that there are all these career gurus on TikTok and Instagram who are saying, hey, go to ChatGPT, have it write 1,000 resumes. It can do it. It's amazing. And then they get rejected instantly and they wonder what's going on. And so I think it's not so much about, even the AI piece, but what's missing is the human piece. The reality is that behind every job, behind every hiring opportunity, there are humans, recruiters, hiring managers, people who actually want to find awesome other humans to work with and aren't just going to be sort of hoodwinked because ChatGPT spat out a resume. And so I think what we're missing in some of these, again, so-called gurus is the human dimension of like, who's your actual audience? What do they care about? What do they need? This is not just a game where you put like magic codes into the system and then a job magically pops out. So I think if we can take the best of AI with the best of human empathy and understanding, now we're going to get a little bit closer to actually serving that audience and getting the jobs that we crave.
Yeah, totally agree. I think kind of what comes out of what you're saying is that what's missing here is people are like, oh, with AI, you can cast this very wide net, right? And it's like, well, on the flip side of that, for the people reviewing applications, if you cast a wide net, it's going to have some amount of holes, and AI is getting better and better at seeing those holes, whether that hole is the fact that you used AI to write it and it sounds like it's being identified, or you're not exactly tracking to what they're looking for as much because it was too much of a spray and pray approach, right? So it's definitely my approach has always been I cast like a smaller to medium sized net and make it really, really strong and well fortified. And to your point about the human connection, I think people are not realizing the importance of getting on the phone and calling people and networking within the company, talking to the HR representative, hey, my application, I submitted my application, would love to learn more, like stuff. Like so many people are like, I applied to 1,000 jobs. I'm like, how many of them did you actually like go and reach out to people? They're like, well, I figure my odds are low anyway, so I just apply a bunch of stuff and then, I'll prove that part when I get the interview. It's like, well, you're not going to get the interview. So,
yeah, it's so true. And I think the key thing that you mentioned there is that it turns out there's actually studies to this effect that today, even in this awful market, people who are applying to something like 25 to 50 roles are actually getting jobs faster than people who are applying to like 500 to 1,000 roles. Because I think what we forget is like, we have this mathematical fallacy. We say, okay, we know things are tough. Let's imagine that like every single job application has a 0.1% chance of leading to an offer. Therefore, I just needed to apply to 1,000 jobs and I'll hit it on one of them. What you've done by taking that 1,000 job approach is you've actually driven your odds of being hired to zero for every single role.
yes.
Because your one size fits all approach, which is necessitated by applying to 1,000 jobs, is always going to lead to zero results. Versus if you send out 25 or 50 really good applications where you get someone on the inside to go to bat for you, even if the odds on those are only 5 or 10%, that's more than enough to get your foot in the door compared to spray and pray.
Got you. Yeah, totally agree. Everything you're saying really resonates with me. And I'm glad that my approach was in line with what the theory is that you're discussing now, because I feel like I never really understood people's very widespread approach. It wasn't my gig. And I guess my next question, kind of moving into the current state of your company and how you're thinking about growth, is, your goal is to ultimately reach all these students, right? And there's kind of two main ways to go about that. It's either you're going directly to the student or you're going through an educational body. And so I guess it would be great to just hear the business perspective of how you're thinking about making this impact that you want, right? Your goal to reach the next 100,000 students with substantive AI education before this bad advice.
That's right. That's right. And so, it's really interesting because early on in my entrepreneurial journey, and again, this is very similar to like learning all these lessons the hard way in my career journey, I had this kind of build it and they will come philosophy. I'm just going to throw all this advice out there and then we'll see what lands and hopefully someone will show up. Of course, as you come to realize, careers occupy a really strange space in our human existence. On the one hand, they're one of the most important things because they determine our lifestyle, our ability to live the life that we want, our happiness because we're spending so many of our hours at work. And yet, because the idea of applying for jobs and the idea of thinking about careers is so annoying or depressing to most people, we underinvest in them. We spend very little time, as little time as possible, thinking about it or experiencing it. And so what I realized is that if you are trying to constantly go out there and find new clients, new people to coach, that's really hard because even if you deliver the best experience in the world, you're going to be out of a job once your client has found a job. Whereas the beauty of working with a university is they have the evergreen need. A university is constantly getting in new students who need to be coached, need to be trained, need to be set up for success in the world. And that's why I've skewed my business in a latter direction, but only by going in the former direction for years and getting
Hmm.
nowhere.
Yeah, well, I hope when you say for years and getting nowhere, it wasn't years of no success. I'm hoping it was just not success to the caliber and impact that you wanted. But I'm glad to hear that you're on the right path now and that you felt the traction with universities, both from your business perspective and the impact that you're able to drive. That's fantastic. I guess I'm curious to you, what's been going well in terms of your go-to-market and your improving motion with your institutional sales to academia?
Yeah. So the other cool thing is, I mean, not that word of mouth can't be important for individual coaching. Obviously, if I coached you, Ethan, you had a great experience, and then one of your friends was looking for a job, that could be a very strong sort of influence. But the really cool thing about higher education as an industry is it's incredibly peer referenced. If you're at University of North Carolina, I hate to say this, but you care a lot about what Duke is doing down the road and vice versa. I
Yeah,
know I
it's
had
true.
to go
It's
there.
true. It's true. No, I think they just care about what we're doing.
There we go. There we go. It's like Yankees, Red Sox. That being said, so like I think one of the cool things about higher ed is people say, "Oh, higher ed is such a terrible industry compared to like corporate America. They're under resourced and it's fragmented and blah blah." And that may be true, but the reality is that there is a lot of alliances, a lot of partnerships across universities where people are sharing notes. And so one of the great things for my business is I've really never spent on like outbound marketing so much as just built good relationships with my existing partners and had them sort of spread the word on their own.
Gotcha, gotcha. And as you think about expansion and trying to make your impact exponential, right? Like you obviously have your current team and yourself who's doing a fantastic job delivering and focusing on the clients that you are serving, and they're referring you to to the next person to the next person, and there's compounding growth in that for sure. I guess I'm curious how you've thought about the like expansion plan, right? Like if you want to really compound your growth, do you think that the referral base is going to be sufficient to keep moving you to the next university, or have you considered other ways that might be important to reach people? I know we've ruled out the mass content spray to get out, or not fully ruled out, but have deprioritized that. Just curious what else you're thinking in terms of making that impact you want.
Yeah. So I think for me, it's less about sort of expanding the higher ed base and more about reaching the folks that higher ed is not reaching. Because I think about the fact that, like, even to go to college in America already puts you in a certain elite class compared to folks who don't get that privilege, don't get that opportunity. And so my goal is to try to figure out ways to reach folks who maybe have a high school education, a GED, were in the military, and are trying to build really exciting careers with purpose, with meaning, but they don't have the benefit of a career services team who's catering to their needs. So if you've got ideas, Ethan, I'm definitely wide open, but that's kind of the final frontier for me is to serve the folks who are underserved by our current setup.
Yeah, yeah. So have you thought about treating high schools the same way that you've treated academia, and potentially starting with private schools who have more budget? I, I see why it's an iffy field to play in relative to higher education, especially since you're having success there and momentum. But I guess I'm curious why, if you've been having success with the academia and like that it's growing, and I'm sure demanding a lot of your time, why now are you starting to think about the pivot? Is it purely just that, oh, there's a gap here and there's more people that need help? Curious your thoughts there.
Yeah, great question. So I think it kind of goes back to those TikTok gurus we were talking about, which is
It always
if I
does.
kind of imagine, yeah, that's right. I'll come back to TikTok. If I imagine like, hey, I just got out of the army, I'm 25, I don't have a college degree, I'm not sure what to do with my life, but I do have this, you know, um, sort of veterans benefit. If you go on TikTok, you will find all these ways to blow that benefit and to waste your time spinning your wheels. When in fact, like there should be a clear plan in place to bring you into a career that you love, to build a life that you're excited about.
Mm,
And if I can find a megaphone or a way of reaching those folks, it doesn't have to be to get paid for it. Just like I want to make sure that there's a little bit of competition in that guru space where it's not like, oh, let's do the easy button for everything. Let's just sort of rub the magic lamp and let the genie find our way. But instead, here's how the world really works. Maybe no one ever explained this to you, but you need to know this because our lives are too short to waste them going down a path that's not right for us.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's interesting because there's almost like two sides to your business here, right? It's like one is career coaching and it's very purpose driven, which I love. It's not just help you find a job fast by using AI. That's not at all what it is. It's recognizing like who you really are, who you want to be, and how a job is the gap in between those things and something that aligns with your path and fits into it. So almost just a pure career coaching, and maybe AI is a tool to help accelerate that and boost the thinking and boost the humanity out of it, sure. But the other side is just a full business surrounding AI, implementation and adoption and recognition of need and use and all these use cases, like you said, that are more underneath the surface, right? So I guess I'm curious how you're juggling these two, in my opinion, pretty different businesses. I see how they marry, of course, because you get better with the AI as a tool and understanding it deeply and using it. But then when it comes to job application and planning your career in life, that's two very different things.
Yeah, so here's my secret sauce. Even though I've run this business as a solopreneurship for about a decade at this point, two big things happened in the last year. I hired my first employee, a chief of staff who is actually a student at one of the universities I work with, and she's been awesome. And so she's helping take care of a lot of the grunt work of getting things done. And then number two, just like you, Ethan, I'm using Claude and Claude Cowork and things like that to automate some of this stuff where I was just purely going through the motions, just sort of like signing checks, for lack of a better idea. And then I've been using that time to actually start to sort of dip my toe into the waters of how do I make videos go viral on TikTok? How do I actually reach a bigger audience than just my higher education folks? And so it's interesting because I feel like we are always haunted by this idea that there's just not enough time in the day to get stuff done, when in fact, there are tools at our disposal today to squeeze in those extra opportunities if we know where to look for them.
Gotcha. Yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. I'd be curious what some of the main things were that were taking up your time that you were able to go and work on. And perhaps maybe on the other side, maybe one example or two examples of each, let's say, two things that you were able to automate that were the most high priority. And then maybe if you have two things that you're still thinking about, oh, this is like really pressing and taking too much time. Yeah, curious the difference there. And for example,
Yes, I think
feel free to take that how you
all the
want.
all the coaches out there will definitely be like nodding along when I say this, but we all wear so many hats. Like, obviously, we do it for the love of coaching, not for the love of invoicing, financial management, accounting, all the other things. And so you can imagine that every time I engage with an institution, there's a certain amount of paperwork and financial machinery that has to go into effect to bring these deals to fruition. And so that's the kind of thing where traditionally we either would have had to hire someone, full-time dedicated to this. And now we have the power to hire someone part-time, freelance, have Claude Cowork step in for us occasionally, and buy back some of that time for what's actually not that expensive. It's funny. I'm going to say something really crazy. I'm spending $200 a month on the Claude Max plan. I don't know if you are, Ethan,
No,
but I feel like it's a total deal because if you could, buy back 2,000 dollars a month of your time for $200, that's one of the best bargains in human history. And I think if we know how to use these tools, we actually can achieve some of those efficiencies.
Yeah, no, I really strongly agree with that sentiment. And that's actually how I do my value framing to my clients, right? Like I quantify the time savings, put it in dollar opportunity. You both quantify it as like, this is your hourly rate and like, this is what the time is worth to you based on what you make throughout the day. But then you also can say, this is what happens now if you reallocate that time. So it really is like a compounding thing, right? Of freeing up that time. So yeah, love to hear that. And I guess what's one thing that you're still looking, that you're still like, this is taking a while. Maybe it is the getting into the content thing and thinking about how the automation will ultimately come into that.
Yeah, this is sort of like that jagged frontier that Ethan Mollick at Penn always talks about when it comes to AI developments. Is like, here you have Claude Cowork that's a genius when it comes to accounting. It can burn through the spreadsheets faster than I ever could have. And yet, if you ask it to help you develop a video, it has no taste. It has no sense of aesthetics. It wasn't trained on these things. And so when it comes time to putting together, really engaging creative, I think a lot of that still rests with us humans. And maybe that's a good thing. Like the fact that there are certain aspects of our existence and our productivity that relies upon human skills, not just things that can be automated. That's job security for all the artists and videographers of the world. So
Hmm.
it is a challenge that I'm still trying to figure out, but maybe that's ultimately good for us as a species.
Yeah, I love that. We got to preserve something, right? I mean, and I think ultimately, at the end of the day, what is still preserved on the human side is that what you're able to learn about something like content creation through AI is what are the messages that are really going to resonate with people? Like what can I say? How can I reframe this 10-minute speech of things that I want to communicate to somebody into a 30-second thing that will ultimately be able to attract that person, get them interested in my services, and then we can actually have an opportunity to discuss with them that 30-minute thing that is going to potentially be really impactful on their lives. Which is why I was, as we were talking earlier, it was funny because we started off by saying that you diverted the content side, and now it sounds like you're shifting back to it because you've recognized an ability to serve a market that was initially not your target, but is maybe only more accessible through that channel. I'm understanding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would be an interesting idea to study businesses that maybe started as B2B and moved more B2C or vice versa. Because I think in my case, I found that B2C was a very hard place to build a sustainable business, a sustainable
Yeah.
recurring, cash flow. And yet, once you have that cash flow in place, that's the next frontier. That's the much bigger audience that takes more resources to go after, but is actually more meaningful in the sense of serving the whole world. So, interesting to think about other businesses that have evolved to explore both sides of the coin.
Yeah. I mean, but I would say that your B2B approach is very different in that the business of higher education has just a massive trickle down effect. But perhaps like one of the difficulties here for you is like tangibility, right? If you have 100,000 people that sign up for your program and are all paying members and whatnot, well, let's pretend that they're getting the same value at what the education delivers versus what they deliver, right? What you're able to see, track, recognize, and feel from the people that signed up for your services on a B2C end is different than the footprint that you're going to have on the B2B end because it's hard to feel how that rain's trickling down and who's actually getting wet from it. Like it's maybe a little bit more disconnected, for lack of better words. But I think
Yeah,
still
no,
very
you nailed it,
impactful.
Ethan. Yeah.
I think
Yeah. And
still
so
super impactful.
obviously, impact is in the eye of the beholder. And I would never say that, doing this or that is not useful. But I think you're absolutely right. There's something about um, having like a B2B to C type business, like was what I really have. I'm you working
Yeah.
through the institutions to serve end user students and job seekers. But I think when you do have that clean B2C engagement, like you said, there's more transparency where you can see the fruits of your labors directly.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, totally agree. And I think it's an important thing to build out. I think another thing that's worth noting is that initially your attempt at B2C was without having had the foundation, credibility, reputation. Oh, well, you had a great reputation before from my LinkedIn stock of you, but um, the credibility that you've built out by working with hundreds of universities. I mean, come on, you can't match that, right? So now you're talking to students or people who want to go to college or recognize they could have gone to college and establish or attach credibility with these institutions. They're now able to see you as one of the gurus that is not just the 25-year-old that is trying to make a quick buck, but is actually somebody who cares and has delivered real value for institutions at scale. So it's very different.
Absolutely.
I guess one question I have again from a just business growth like standpoint. I'm curious. One thing that we talked about last 2 weeks ago was how there's a different sale approach to each university, right? Some people are very much under the we need to adopt and we need to really just push the widespread adoption and use and establishing use cases. And then others, it's more the dark side of it, right? Like here's all the issues with it. Here's the things we need to be thinking about. I'm curious, as you've looked at your existing B2B customer base, your institutional customer base, how have you thought about the like upselling and cross-selling of your different kind of products and services here, right? Like you've got the here's the educational uplifting the entire student body. These are the programming things that we need to do, etc. But then you've got the like here's the cautions. Have you been able to sell both at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, for me, a lot of it is the fact that universities are not homogenous bodies where it's like, okay, I'm working with University of North Carolina, therefore I've checked the Tar Heels off my list. But instead, these very separate entities operating inside a larger constellation. So you've got Keenan and Flagler, your alma mater, the business school. There's the law school, the medical school, undergraduate, engineering, all these different things. And so in some ways, the cross sell is not so much like, oh, let me upsell you on something else, as, hey, if you're getting a lot of value at Keenan and Flagler, would you be willing to share that with your colleagues at the law school?
Mm-hmm.
So again, just a very pure reference, very connected space, which is kind of refreshing in this world of like constant layoffs and corporate disloyalty on both sides. The fact that they're actually still connective tissue inside a university and between universities is pretty cool.
Gotcha. Yeah, yeah. So for you, I'm guessing that your business growth is much more, okay, we've started at this new university. Let's pretend it's like the first university that you started at. Maybe it's you start with one program and then it moves to the other programs, and then there's enough noise that the neighboring school, right? You started at the UNC, you went to the med school, Keenan Flagler engineering, and now NC State engineering heard about it because they have a joint biomedical engineering team, and now like that's kind of the spread approach there.
That's exactly right. And I think, yeah, it's amazing how much people talk. So
Yeah, yeah. And then I guess last thing. So I mean, 12-month vision is like something that I like to talk about with people, and it sounds like for you, 12-month vision does have this going the content route. But I guess on the just B2B question, like one thing that I'm thinking about is yes, like the referral base has been existing, but you're saying, oh, I want to like make an even more of an impact, right? So to me, that reads as just the growth of referral isn't enough and isn't enough universities all at once to be making that same impact. And so a pivot is something that you're exploring right now. Have you thought about any other ways to grow the institutional pipeline in order to achieve your 12-month goal of having that next 100,000 impacted by your services?
yeah. So I think, definitely lots of stuff within the higher ed space. So for example, I spoke at this big law school conference for the first time a couple months ago. I've done similar things for public policy and other parts of academia. But I'm also always thinking about like, what are the different channels? I think it's interesting to imagine, hey, we live in this TikTok universe, but people do still occasionally read books. And so I just wrote a book about how to AI proof your career in this crazy world of ours. So basically leaving no stone unturned, but trying to be strategic as I check out different opportunities.
I don't understand how you're able to allocate your time. It's really impressive. I guess just you've gradually built this business from the ground up, and you've made it as AI native now as possible. Is what it sounds like to me. Jeremy, I know we're wrapping up on time here. I guess just last question for you, and then I promise I'll set you free. If you had to say that there's one big problem standing in your business right now that you like really are trying to solve the most, what would that problem be, and what do you think that the solution is?
Yeah, I think the number one problem is that too many people, and this is like an existential problem for our species, too many people don't wake up every morning with a clear sense of doing something useful in the world, to say nothing of the salary that comes along with that. And I feel like that is the biggest waste of human potential, is that people can now go their entire lives without getting a chance to do something that they care deeply about and that they feel is meaningful to others. And so the more that I can help folks find that North Star and actually achieve it, that is the opportunity and that is the challenge at the same time.
Wow, wow, that's a quote right there. I might have to save that and write that down in my quote book for later. I collect a quote book with me and my friends, and everything, either whether it's humor or of a deep value that has been said, and I like that. I think that's making the book. Speaking of the book, Jeremy, the last thing is if you could just give our listeners here any references to where they can learn more about you, your book, and just your information, so that anyone interested can get in touch with you. That'd be great.
Yeah, for sure. Feel free to check me out at thejobinsiders.com, or better yet, as a former LinkedIn employee, hit me up on that big blue site. Always happy to connect.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeremy, so much for being here. It's been a pleasure.
Hey, big kudos to you, Ethan. I love what you're doing here. Thanks for helping so many.
If today's conversation resonated with you and you're looking to learn how business leaders are driving value using AI, make sure to hit subscribe. Feel free to check out our other episodes. And I've also left my LinkedIn in the description below, so you're welcome to connect, and I will see you next time.